I'm Mark Stevens. I'm the VP of Marketing for Emerald Expositions. We put on a variety of trade shows. My portfolio is over food and technology, and I'll talk a little bit today about the changes that we've seen within the meat alternative market, alt protein market, and how that came to be and how that has impacted the... You can't hear? Oh, you want louder? Okay. And how that's impacted the and evolved in the U.S. market. So where are we today? So roughly 6% of the U.S. Adult population identifies as vegan as of 2020. It's a 500% increase since 2014, and that only refers to people who are 100% vegan, not people who are flexitarian. So it's roughly 1% of the total U.S. population. And what we found, ignore my third bullet point there, it should update and say that 40% of Americans have actively tried alternate proteins. And of that 40%, 67% are regularly purchasing it from grocery stores. In 2020, a Gallup poll showed that roughly 23% of U.S. citizens consider themselves to be flexitarian, meaning that they are slowly reducing the amount of meat products that they're eating with the goal of becoming vegan. So what's caused this change? A 500% increase over just 6 years is significant, particularly in something that requires an adherence to a very strict diet. So the first is the highlight of ESG within the United States. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's the Environmental, Social, and Civil Governance Initiative. It ranges for everything from labor practices, manufacturing processes, and it's essentially an ethical code for businesses. As U.S. consumers have become more aware of this, and there are at least a half dozen financial institutions that have ESG rankings or scoring, U.S. citizens have become more adept at identifying companies that they're willing to invest in, whether it be financial investment within stocks or it be just at the grocery store and what products that they're purchasing.
When you speak, it feels like
the second element that caused a major change to the way that individuals were changing their diets was COVID-19. So during COVID-19, there was a lot of isolation across the world. There was a lot of introspection about how people were putting things into their body, what foods they were eating, the health benefits of those foods. And there was a greater focus on just personal health in general. In addition to that, there were supply chain issues around the world, but in the United States, there were meat shortages for the better half of 2 years. Excuse me, the better part of 2 years. And what that caused is some of the changes that occur within diets were forced. If you go to the grocery store, you wouldn't see meat on the shelves, and so you were forced to find an alternate protein. The meat processing plants themselves were highly impacted by COVID-19. The workers are working in very close quarters, and a number of them were contracting it, spreading it, and shutting down meat processing plants and slaughterhouses. The USDA reported that 15% of chicken slaughterhouses, 35% of beef slaughterhouses, and 43% of pork slaughterhouses were all shut down for a majority of 2020. A portion of those never opened again. So there was a supply and demand issue where the demand was there for some sort of protein, but the supply was completely wiped off the shelves. The third element was the proactive action, the proactive nature of companies who were building their catalogs in meat alternative products. So major brands were coming to the market with partnerships with Beyond and Impossible. Burger King was an early adopter in 2020 and made a huge splash with their Impossible Whopper. There have been pilot programs for McDonald's and Pizza Hut, as well as a half dozen other U.S. brands, and they want to bring that to the market and make meat alternative products a mainstream staple to address the market demand for it. So there's money behind it as well. This is just a sampling of some of the brands that have put significant investment into meat alternative products. Ingredion doesn't have 100% of their portfolio in meat alternative products, but it has a lot. And obviously their market share is significant. Beyond and Oatly both had huge IPOs during this period. Tattooed Chef is a frozen food operator. They're just getting started. They just recently had their IPO. Impossible is another that people are paying attention to, and eventually they'll likely go public. But there's a lot of private equity behind these brands and investment behind these brands because they feel that there's an opportunity to bring it to a wider audience and continue to make a profit. There's also a controversial idea about saving money. So if you're moving to a vegan diet and there's a change happening on a global scale, how does that impact the fundamentals of farmland within the United States? So right now, there are 240 million acres of farmland that are dedicated to raising crops just for livestock. If you were to reduce that in some capacity, it would likely open up the door for more of that farmland to be developed into plants for people, as well as reducing some of the greenhouse gases that animals produce. It's not 100% agreed upon, but there is science behind that. There's also a massive issue with what are called manure lagoons, which is where the animal waste from cattle and pork are stored, and it contaminates groundwater, which has to then be treated. So solving for some of this in the eyes of alternative meat products would be reducing all of this impact, shifting things from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet, and at the same time saving money for the consumer. This is a mini case study from one of the shows in my portfolio. Pizza Expo is the largest pizza expo in the world. In 2022, we staged its 38th edition. And if you walked the show floor, you'd see that 30% of the exhibitors had some contribution to either meat alternative products or dairy alternative products. It's significant to think about that when the pizza industry is so heavily invested within cheese and meats. It's an industry sector that hasn't varied much over the last 40 or 50 years. And when you were to walk the show floor, you'd see that there's a massive change just in 1 year's time. Some of the driving force behind that is that vegan and plant-based pizzas in the United States can sell at a premium cost. So you can charge anywhere from 25 to 50% more for these products, which allows a pizzeria owner to generate a larger profit. So where does this take us? At the end of the day, I don't think we're ever going to see a U.S. economy that is lacking meat-based products. There are more people are eating more meat today than they were before, even with an increase in the number of vegans that are in the United States today. And likely there's a careful balance between the two. So if we have veganism continuing to grow over the next 5 to 10 years, it's not necessarily a trend because it's being guided by other factors like ESGs. However, the meat industry will not necessarily suffer from that. They've bounced back. Meat processing plants are back and open again, and they're able to work at capacity again. It's back on the store shelves. So there's just an active choice from a consumer as to whether or not they want to buy a meat product or a meat alternative product. So that's everything. Thanks for your time.